Here's what it's like to be an American doctor in Gaza amid the genocide.
Where was that?
That bomb hit the building.
There was a 15-year-old kid ready for discharge that was incinerated.
We all saw the horrors unfolding in Gaza on social media, but these 3 US physicians actually went there and shared what they witnessed in a new documentary called American Doctor.
As a Jewish physician, I knew nothing about Gaza. Like most Americans, I thought everybody out here were nothing but terrorists because that's what I was told.
As an American, I just don't want my government involved in crimes.
I'm a US doctor who wants to see babies like my babies not be killed anymore.
Hey guys, it's Dena, and I want you to take note of this powerful film that shows audiences, especially Americans, how US tax dollars are being used in Israel's war on Gaza.
This is what my tax dollars did. What your tax dollars did. What my neighbor's tax dollars did.
I spoke to the director and one of the doctors featured in the film. What made you want to make this film and specifically focus on healthcare workers in Gaza?
One thing that occurred to me was people love watching medical dramas. So I thought to myself, maybe if we could make a film, a medical drama, the only difference is it's real and it's set in Gaza. Maybe that's how we can bring what's happening to Palestine back to the United States.
And Thaif, you went to Gaza to volunteer as a doctor at risk to your own life. How did you decide to take that risk?
I don't think it was much of a decision, to be honest. I think many of us in the Palestinian diaspora were yearning for a way to be able to do something, to make a difference. And so, it just so happened that being a physician, that was one of the few ways you can get into Gaza, despite the blockade and the siege and the massive bombardment.
3 surgeons all working on one little girl for 2.5 hours, and she's probably going to lose her right leg, left leg, and her left arm.
I trained in Detroit. I work on the south side of Chicago. I work at trauma centers. There is nothing that can compare to what took place in Gaza. It was designed to make sure that there were so many people that would lose their lives as a result of the Israeli bombardment.
You're getting waves of patients. What do you prioritize? What do you have to treat them? You got no pain medicine to give the people whose legs have been blown off.
That I think what's really surprising about this film is seeing you and the other 2 American doctors do so much media and press and advocacy.
It's on us to make sure that their stories are told.
What was that like to balance your role as a doctor with also being a journalist and an advocate?
We don't want to be doing the interviews. We'd very much rather be putting gloves on and working on our patients. Now, you realize very quickly that your voice can maybe break that sort of censorship and that silence that exists towards Palestinians.
They didn't ask for this, and yet they had to assume this role of being the journalist. The film, as much as it is about American medical workers, it's also a critique on media.
What was harder, treating these cases in Gaza or trying to convince Americans and the Western world about what's happening in Gaza?
Seeing a genocide is something that leaves a mark on you. It's traumatizing, but at least there is sort of this idea of we're all going to be working towards a singular goal, as opposed to somebody denying it to your face. The gaslighting that was taking place here in the United States, that's something that, still makes me angry from time to time.
What surprised me most was how the carnage was focused on journalists, healthcare workers, and children.
Poh, obviously you weren't able to get into Gaza as Gaza's closed off to the rest of the world and journalists. So how were you able to get that footage from there?
I used to work at Al Jazeera English. Because of our, connection to having worked with folks there, we were able to work with them, and they were our eyes and ears on the ground. And it's because of their hard work, sacrifice, and dedication that we got to film inside Nasser Medical Complex.
At risk to their own lives, right? Because we've seen Israel repeatedly target journalists, and the camera is basically a target.
We do not take for granted. When Ibrahim Al-Odla and Mohammed Sawaf had to work to film inside Nasser Medical Complex, they were literally starving. So even with all of that, they decided they wanted to make this film, and they told us, please promise us that you will take the message of what we're seeing here back to the United States. So that's what we intend to do with American Doctor.
We don't just see the American doctors in the film, we see all of the heroic Palestinian healthcare workers that are working alongside them. Thad, can you tell me a little bit about them and working with them?
It became very clear what the Israeli military's plans for Palestinian hospitals in Gaza was. It was going to dismantle, raid, and render defunct every hospital that it could. Despite that becoming a clear fact, you still saw the healthcare workforce show up to the hospital every day. And they knew that they were going to be targeted, and they still were showing up to work, and they still were trying to advocate for their patients. Everybody knew what happened to Dr. Adnan al-Bursh, who was found dead in Ofar prison because of the torture that he endured. Dr. Nahid, who was the director of the surgery department in Nasser Hospital, who knew that the army had surrounded the hospital, and he refused to leave the hospital. Dr. Hussam Abu Safiya refused to abandon his pediatric patients. We saw him had to walk towards an Israeli tank and be abducted since then. Every single person that I've worked with, something happened to them in a devastating way that would have broken so many of us here in the United States or in Europe.
As a filmmaker, it reminded me, if they are not stopping, then what is my excuse? And that is what I hoped audiences will get out of it.
We want hungry kids to be fed. We want hospitals to be able to operate without the fear of being attacked.
So this was filmed in 2025. Where we are now in 2026, there's been a noticeable shift in American public opinion away from Israel. How have you each observed this shift?
On Capitol Hill, even the most aggressively anti-Palestinian offices are beginning to sort of acknowledge how public opinion has changed in the United States. They're not willing to advocate for Palestinians, but they're very aware of changing public opinion. It's beyond my wildest dreams that we've gotten to this point of the conversation.
So it makes me wonder, wow, okay, things have changed quite fast, but at the same time, there's this urgency because things are not changing fast enough, not just in Gaza, but also in the West Bank.
We're talking about a singular sort of effort to erase the Palestinian people from their land, and that's in all parts of Palestine. We're the same people. And so I think everything that's unfolding, it's reaching a pressure point. And so it's important for everybody to see what we can do to sort of contribute to the preservation of Palestine. Palestine is just the beginning. I think the freedom of all people will be connected toward the freedom of Palestinians.